think we'll just give people a couple more minutes and then we'll start. Okay, so I think we should probably make a start so that we can all also finish on time. So I just wanted to introduce myself initially. So my name is Alia Ijaz. I'm a senior associate at Meyerson Solicitors in Altrincham and part of the Women and Wills Committee. So today we've got the pleasure of Michael Civita from 3Q Hub, who's going to be speaking to us about delegation and feedback, particularly to junior colleagues. So I think this is quite a useful topic, particularly because we do sometimes more focus on the legal side of our jobs, but actually it's equally as important for us to work on our soft skills, particularly in our professional jobs where we are trying to make things more efficient and cost effective as well for our clients. It's just important for us to work on these skills. So really happy to be having Michael with us today to talk about this topic. I myself have done training with 3Q Hub and Michael and his colleagues, and it's always been very useful, and I've always picked up a lot of tips that I've managed to use in practice. So I'm sure you'll all take a lot away from today's seminar. So I'm going to just pass it over to Michael, but just before we start, I'd just like to let you know that this is being recorded. So if you'd like to turn your cameras off if you haven't already, and pop yourself on mute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alia, and really, really good to be here this morning. Thank you for having me. So just to introduce myself formally, my name is Michael Civita. I am founder and managing director of 3Q Hub, and very excited to talk to you today. A bit of a whistle-stop tour around all things delegation and feedback. In terms of content for this morning, we're going to split the session into two parts. Firstly, delegation. Starting with the benefits, not just to the delegator, that's probably you, who is seeking to delegate work down to more junior members of staff usually, but also to the delegatee, the individual, the more junior colleague, as Alia mentioned, in the team, but also commercially to the firm, to the business, okay, in relation to the human capital and the reduction of bottlenecks that delegation normally brings about. And then I'm going to move on to what makes delegation possible. And I'm going to introduce you, albeit quite quickly, through the 3Q Hub 10 steps for effective delegation. For those of you that aren't familiar with 3Q Hub, what we do as a business, we support professional people in developing their personal impact. And the 3Qs of 3Q Hub are the 3 quotients of impact, which are an individual's intellectual IQ, intellectual quotient, so their IQ, their emotional quotient, which is their EQ, which is all around building relationships and self-management, and a resilient quotient, which is your RQ. And what we do as a business is we support professional people with their EQ and their RQ. So I'm going to introduce you to the 10 steps for effective delegation. And then we're going to move on to feedback. What does good feedback look like? So some of the do's and don'ts for giving feedback. But also what I want to do is introduce you to my favorite framework for giving feedback, which is the EEK framework. And I'm going to break that down for you a little bit later on. A little bit about 3Q Hub before we get started. We are a dedicated consultancy team of behavioural specialists and leadership consultants. All of our consultants live and breathe all aspects of management and leadership. We have a very niche client base as a business, so we only work with professional service firms, and all of those firms fall into one of two categories. They are either chartered accountancy firms or legal firms, firms of solicitors. Okay, so everything that we do is geared up towards those two professions. What we do primarily, and this is where I met Alia from Myson, we deliver structured in-house programs at professional service firms, and those programs are geared up from absolutely brand new trainees that are joining the firm, all the way up to sort of director and partner level. We also run other services as well as a business. There will be a link at the end of the presentation to our website for you to take a deep dive into what we do. But we also offer lots of coaching. We do a 360-degree feedback service as well, and we also run shorter sessions like I'm doing today on more focused areas. So that's enough about 3Q Hub. Let's get straight into the content because we don't have too long together this morning. So let's start with delegation and how to make it work. Well, first of all, we need to define what delegation is. Delegation is about getting our work done through others. And the beauty of delegation is exactly that we are utilizing other people to help fulfill our aims, our jobs, our matters. We have to be able to distinguish between what delegation is, okay, and what abdication is, because often the two are confused, and especially with more junior members of the team. And what often happens is they get delegation and abdication confused. We have to recognize that delegation is all about maintaining accountability. So if I choose to utilize other people in my team to help me get my work done, I have to recognize that overall accountability does stay with me. The matter that I'm dealing with, that transaction that I'm dealing with, whatever area of law it is that we work in, I'm ultimately accountable for what happens on that job. Abdication is when I utilize somebody else, and once I've utilized them, I transfer the accountability over to them. And abdication in most areas of the legal profession is clearly not what we are seeking. We are seeking the role of delegation, where the manager, the associate, maintains accountability but utilizes the people around them. And in order for delegation to happen, and in order for it to happen effectively, there are certain facets that we need to make sure that we are very, very mindful of. One of those things is ensuring that we are giving people the responsibility for the individual parts of the matter. And a big area where delegation fails is that we often don't spend enough time when we are trying to transfer the responsibility onto somebody else as we're utilizing them. We often don't spend enough time in the briefing, and we often rush or skimp on the briefing, and we make too many assumptions that the person that we are utilizing knows more than what they do. They have more context than what they really have. They already have the background information. We make a lot of assumptions because normally, we are skimping on that briefing. And my encouragement will always be, when we are trying to delegate work, ensuring that we have scheduled time in our calendar, in the other person's calendar, to really ensure that we have sufficient time to explain what it is that we'd like the other person to do. So being really, really clear on the responsibilities of the other individual that we are utilizing. The second part is ensuring that we are giving the control and the freedom to the individual. Okay, so a big part of delegation is about buy-in and trying to get the person that we are delegating to really want to do this bit of work, to buy into it, to see the benefits to them. And it's important to recognize that autonomy, so freedom, within perimeters and within safe perimeters, is highly likely to breed engagement in the other person. So when we are trying to get the person to buy into this bit of work, we really want to give them, okay, control of the bit of work. And what we have to consider as part of that is where the freedom lies. And we often get this wrong when we are delegating work. Okay, so essentially, when we are utilizing somebody else, in a professional services environment, we have to have a little bit of a checklist in terms of freedom and the freedom that we're giving to somebody else. And there are essentially three areas that we can give that autonomy on, that freedom on. One of the areas is going to be, okay, the legal process, okay, the technical process involved in that bit of work. So the steps that need to be followed. And sometimes there will be a bit of work that we are giving somebody where there is absolutely no freedom whatsoever, okay, in the steps that the person needs to follow. Other times, okay, there might be more flexibility or autonomy in terms of the process that the person needs to follow. And we need to ensure that when we're giving the person a bit of work, we are really, really clear, okay, on how much autonomy there is in that technical process. Otherwise, okay, they're going to be returning work back to us when we are doing the review, and it won't be what we want it to look like, okay, and the person will then become disengaged. So the first thing we need to consider when we are giving the work is the technical process. How much freedom or autonomy are we giving on that? The second area that I would encourage you to be mindful of when you are transferring the work over to the other person is to be really, really clear in terms of how much freedom they have with regards to the format and the layout and the style. And as we are becoming more familiar with delegation, okay, we have to recognize and accept that a lot of the layout and style involved in how work looks is preference. And a lot of it is based on professionalism, okay, and how things really should look. And we've got to be able to distinguish, okay, those two things and distinguish between what things are purely preference when it comes to layout and style, and actually, in the grand scheme of things, don't really matter, although that's how we like it to look, and which things, okay, really need to be done, and which things need to be done in order for it to be professional or suit the house style of the firm that we work in. We have to be really, really clear when we're giving the work to the individual, okay, how much freedom they have to decide the layout, the format, and the style. So we've got the technical process, we've got the format and the style, and the third thing that I would encourage you to think about when it comes to autonomy is the timescales, okay, and when the work is completed. Often that is the only thing that we can give autonomy on. And if we can give autonomy, okay, to the individual on something, let's think about where that autonomy might lie. So ensuring that we are giving responsibility, ensuring that we are clear on the responsibilities, and ensuring that we are clear with the individual about the autonomy levels. The second part is the authority. Need to making sure that the person feels like they have the actual authority to be able to do the bit of work. The power, the responsibility now lies with another individual. And therefore, we need to support them by often communicating to the relevant stakeholders that this person will now be completing the work and not you. So ensuring that everybody knows, okay, that there has been a transfer in terms of responsibility. And the third part, as I've already mentioned, is all around accountability. Okay, ensuring that everybody recognises that when they are delegating work, they are not abdicating from it. Okay, the accountability, the ownership stays with the person doing the delegating. So at a high level, okay, they are sort of the main factors, okay, of how we're going to get delegation to happen. Issuing responsibility and clarity, giving appropriate authority, and ensuring that we are retaining the accountability. In terms of why we should do it, delegation is a really, really good way to provide staff development, on-the-job training. We haven't got to send people on courses. Okay, we've not got to have lots of non-chargeable time for this. We can train people on the job. It demonstrates that we trust other people. So it's a really, really good motivating tool as well, because by you delegating something to somebody, utilizing them and investing time in briefing them and training them and supporting them, it's a really positive way to show that you trust them. And for many people, they will see delegating work and being delegated work from you as a challenge, as a motivating factor for them. And of course, delegation will be part of their normal development. So it will be part of their their training contract. It'll be part of them progressing, okay, and taking themselves out of their comfort zone and taking on more challenging work. From a commercial perspective, delegation, of course, aids efficiency. I don't think there's any sort of business leaders, okay, that want bottlenecks within their business. There's a hell of a lot of waiting that has to happen when we have bottlenecks. So by delegating and training people up, okay, it allows more people to be able to do certain tasks, which should in turn, okay, reduce those bottlenecks. It will ensure from a recovery perspective and a commercial perspective that in time, not always straight away, of course, because there is a training element to this, and there is, of course, a period of moving through the learning curve. But in time, we'll have the right people performing the right work. So we have the trainees doing the work that the trainees should be doing. We have the associates doing the work that they should be doing. We have the senior associates doing the work that they should be doing, and so on. So that in turn, the output should be we have better efficiencies and improved recoveries and profitability. And from a priority perspective, delegation will release managers, leaders to focus on higher impact priority areas, more complex matters. It will also allow managers and leaders to focus on their own development. And during a lot of the coaching sessions that we run with senior people within professional firms, delegation is a real challenge for those people. And a lot of the people that really struggle to delegate, actually what they end up neglecting, okay, is a lot of the personal development parts of their role. Also, what often gets neglected, and when we don't delegate, is the work, the project work, the strategic work, which often gets rolled over from one week to the next because we have more pressing operational deadlines. So things like business development, things like process improvement, things like networking, a lot of those things get pushed to the side because we have chargeable work that clearly has deadlines, okay, that have to be worked on. So if we can flip our mindset and start delegating more of the operational work, then we should be able to prioritize and focus on some of those more strategic, okay, non-chargeable areas. So delegation is a really, really good way to help us, okay, with our prioritization. So what makes delegation effective? Well, we at 3Q Hub call this the 5 phases of delegation. Delegation will always start with proactive preparation. Delegation doesn't just happen. It's a skill that we have to learn. So in order for us to delegate effectively, we have to proactively prepare for it. And we have to spend time thinking about who is the right person to delegate. What exactly is it that we want to delegate? Once we've decided and once we've proactively prepared, we can then schedule in the training, okay, the full briefing, the explanation, okay, of what it is that the work involves, why we do it, the purpose, the context. What we also want to be doing as part of phase 2 is ensuring that we are using that training to help the other person practice, okay, what it is that we are training them to do. So that training should include some examples, be it a live example or a case study. But we need to ensure that we are utilizing, okay, the training that we have to ensure that the person has an opportunity to practice. Phase 3 is the support phase. So that's all about ensuring that following the training, the delegatee, the individual, has an opportunity to practice again in a safe environment, whatever it is that we've trained them in. And I really would encourage all of you to ensure that there is quite a short gap where possible between 2 and 3, because the person is much more likely to pass through the stages of competence if they have a live practice that they do on their own, okay, in a short time frame following the training that we've done with them. Step 3, phase 3, involves us supporting them whilst they're practicing. Phase 4 will involve us in a timely manner reviewing the work, okay, checking the work, checking the work against standard. And then phase 5, which we'll come on to a little bit later on, okay, will be the timely feedback. And with most of the clients that I work with, so legal firms and accountancy firms, okay, feedback is often where a lot of this falls down. And a lot of that falls down is because we often see feedback as being something of a one-off exercise rather than being something, okay, that just happens, okay, culturally. We see feedback as being something to try and avoid. We see feedback as something that is awkward. We see feedback as something that might damage or impact relationships. And actually, the work that we do with firms is try to get culture of firms to change so that feedback is just something that we give in a timely way, frequently, clearly, and actually in a way that doesn't impact relationships, okay, but in many ways, okay, really helps them. So they're the 5 phases, and what I'm going to do from there is then move on to the 3Q Hub 10-step process. Okay, so I'm going to work through this with you, and what I'd encourage you to do when we work with our clients on this 10-step process, and what we like to do is we like to get people to work through each one of these steps and actually ask themselves sort of honestly, which of these steps perhaps aren't we investing enough time in when it comes to our own delegation and feedback practices? So step 1 is what is the task? Okay, so this is part of phase 1, which is proactive preparation. What actually is it, okay, that I'd like to delegate, and why? Why would we like to delegate it? So is it a whole task? Is the aim here, okay, that I've got a particular job that I do currently, and actually what I would like to do is pass the responsibility for the whole job, the whole process, onto somebody else, so that that person going forward will be able to follow that whole process and take responsibility for that whole process again and again and again. And it's the again and again and again where the learning curve, okay, and the economies of scale start to happen. Or actually, is it that I don't want or I can't delegate a whole task to somebody because it would be inappropriate to do so, perhaps because I am needed to do part of it, but actually there are stages or steps in the process that could be delegated, which means, okay, perhaps it could be a 5-stage process involved in a particular task, and it might be that I want to delegate steps 1 and 2. I'm going to hold on to 3 because it needs my technical acumen to do that. But then once I've done my technical bit, I'm going to then pass on steps 4 and 5. So we've got to decide this. We've got to determine this and set the perimeters for this, okay, right at the beginning. Also, we've got to consider, is this going to be an ongoing task? So is this something that will occur again and again and again? So once I've trained somebody in this and once they're able to do it and they become competent, it'll be something that they can repeat. If it is, and we know that from the beginning, it's something that actually once I've got somebody able to do it, they're going to be able to do it again and again. That's going to be great. That's going to be something that is much more likely to be delegated. Or actually, is it a one-off? Is it something that actually doesn't come up very often and actually it's more of a one-off task? Now, on those, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't delegate it, okay, but there has to be some other benefits, okay, of delegation in order to delegate something that really is a one-off. And that would normally be the benefit to the individual, okay, the experience or the exposure that that person will get. So that's step 1. What is the task? Step 2 is about people. So, unfortunately, it's very difficult to delegate. Okay, impossible to delegate if we have nobody to delegate work to. So that could be a challenge for you. That could be a problem for us. So the next part is who do we have to delegate the work to? And I use a 3-condition test for this. It's the skill, the will, and the capacity test. And that's what I use when I'm determining who in my team I would like to pass this bit of work down to. The skill test is all around abilities, competency, knowledge, and experiences. So the skill test is, do I have somebody that is skillful, competent, experienced, knowledgeable in this thing already? Now, if the answer to that question is yes, then we can do a simple delegation. We've not got to go through all the stages, okay, of the delegation process because the person can already do it and we can trust them to just get on with it. If the answer to that question is no, though, so they don't have the experience currently, they don't have the competence currently, they don't have the knowledge currently, then the second question that you've got to go through as part of that condition is, do I believe in time this person would be able to achieve competence? And if we have an individual in our team that we look at and think, you know what, I don't believe that even with lots of training and support in this bit of work, I don't believe that this is really the right bit of work for you. I don't believe that this is really going to be something that falls within your skill set. Then really we've failed at condition one, and we should start looking to see whether or not there is an alternative person. So that's the skill condition. Okay, are they competent already, or do we believe that in time they could become competent? The will condition is condition two, is all around someone else's motivation or interest. So do I believe that the other individual that I'm thinking about delegating to, do I believe that this person will want to do this bit of work? Do they have the interest? Do they have the motivation? Will they be able to see the benefits to them of doing this bit of work? That's the will condition. And if we're looking at an individual and we're thinking, actually, they're all I have. Okay, I only have one person, and I'm not sure whether or not they're going to want to do this bit of work. Then what we've got to start thinking about in terms of step two is how we could perhaps sell the bit of work to them. So what's in it for them? What will they learn from this? What exposure might it give them? How might it help them with their knowledge? How might it help them with their studies or whatever it is that they're doing? How might it help them with their learning? What is it, okay, that's going to be in it for them? So that's condition two. Condition three is the capacity condition, and that's all around whether or not the person that I would like to delegate to, whether or not they have the actual time to be able to do that bit of work. And often we can be quite generous when it comes to the third condition of capacity, because often we ask people, and we often will ask somebody, do you have time to be able to do this bit of work for me? And often the person responding will say, oh no, I'm really busy. And that often leads us, based on that response, to then do the work ourselves. And actually, what I'd encourage you to do is be a little bit more assertive in that. Okay, it might be legitimate. They might absolutely not have capacity, but actually it might be that they are prioritizing other things, okay, which aren't as urgent or important as what you would like to delegate to them. And therefore, sometimes just an extra question, something along the lines of, have you got some time to do this? They respond no. Or what is it that you're working on right now? So a secondary probe can be really good to help distinguish and decide whether or not, okay, the work that they're currently working on could be parked, and whether or not you could then spend some time training them in this new bit of work. So who do we have to delegate to? The skill, will, and capacity conditions. If the answer to that question is nobody, then there is a question, are you sure? Do we need to be a little bit more creative? Are there people maybe in more of a support role that we could utilize rather than in a technical legal role? But if the answer to that question is, I am sure there is nobody to delegate work to, then I would drive you back to why we were delegating to begin with. And if there's nobody to delegate to, okay, then there could be a challenge for you as professional people in terms of, well, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you for your own development? What does that mean for you for those projects, okay, that you'd like to get off the ground? So there is a question there, okay, around you, okay, and what's next for you. So we're in the proactive preparation phase. We've thought about the task and we've thought about the person. Step three, we're still in the proactive preparation, is thinking about who our BIPs are. And your BIPs are your buy-in partners. And these are the people that will be impacted by you perhaps delegating work down to somebody else. It is absolutely essential, especially if we have quite driver style BIPs. So these could be partners or directors, but more senior people. It's absolutely essential that we get these people, okay, on board. And what we have to do is we've got to try and ensure that we are getting the buy-in from our BIPs. Okay, so they could be your manager, the partner. And in order to get buy-in from the BIPs, what we've got to try and do is explain to the BIP what the benefit will be of delegating a part of a task down to somebody else. And in order for us to do that, we've really got to know, okay, what it is that motivates the BIP. For example, if we've got a BIP, we've got a partner that we work for that we know is very, very commercial, and they have a very, very high and intense recovery focus, then when I'm trying to get the BIP on board, in terms of me delegating work down to somebody else, I really want to be promoting and selling the fact that in turn, eventually, the delegation will lead, okay, to more commercial benefits, i.e., in turn, there will be a benefit to the recovery. I want to promote the commercial side to the BIP. So the BIP sits back and says, Michael, that sounds like a really good idea. If I know that I've got maybe a BIP that is very much focused on staff development, and I know from knowing the BIP that they are all about progression and developing staff, then I also want to bring in some of the benefits of delegation around staff development to the BIP to get the BIP on board. So we've really got to think about what it is, okay, that the BIP will need to hear in order for them, okay, to support us with the delegating down. And once we've got the BIP on board, once the partners or the directors agree with us that delegation would be a good idea, usually we find the rest of the delegation process a lot easier. So that's 3, getting the BIPs on board. Step 4 is now communicating with the delegatee. Okay, so I know the task, I know the perimeters of the task, I know who I'd like to delegate to, I've got the BIPs on board. So now it's about communicating with the individual, okay, around this delegation. Bring in the step 2 around the will. If I know that the individual, okay, through working with them before, isn't someone that has very high levels of intrinsic motivation, so they're not ever so driven or energized, they often need quite a lot of G'ing up when it comes to the work. As part of this communication, bring in the sell, identify the benefits to the individual, okay, try and influence them, okay, to be passionate and interested in the work that we're giving them. Also, as part of the communication, do ensure that as part of the initial communication to the individual, that we are then scheduling and training. Okay, we need to make sure that we get some time scheduled in so that we can train this individual and give them a thorough briefing on this bit of work. And ensure that during that training, during that briefing, we are being really, really clear in terms of the responsibilities. We're being really, really clear in terms of the context and the purpose of the work. And we're giving the individual the opportunity to practice whatever it is that I'm training them in during that training session. So schedule time in for training. We also, at this stage, can ensure that following the training, we are going to be available. And if it's not us, making sure that somebody else is available to support the individual whilst they are practicing back in the office or at home. We also know that there's going to be some review involved, some checking involved, so we can schedule that in as well. And we also know that we're going to need to give the individual some feedback, so we can schedule that in as well. The more that we can get scheduled in to the calendar, okay, the more likely we are to stick, okay, to that schedule. So that's phase 1. That's the proactive preparation. We've scheduled in the training and we're now in the training. So this is the briefing. So make sure we're allocating sufficient time to the training. Make sure that we are trying to understand how the person best learns. I'm a very active, kinetic learner. If someone is training me in something technical, I like to be controlling the mouse. I like to be having a go during the practical training. I'm not ever so auditory. So somebody just talking to me about a process rather than letting me practice it, okay, isn't ever so purposeful. Neither is, for me personally, reading a step-by-step guide, okay, that confuses me. I like the kinetic aspect of learning, okay, being hands-on and practical. So try and tailor and flex our approach of delivery, okay, to suit the needs of the individual. Try and make it collaborative, try and make it interactive. So as we're working through the briefing, checking the understanding as we go. Create an environment where the person feels comfortable to ask us questions. But likewise, as we're working through the briefing, ask them questions. Do you know why we do this? Do you know what impact A will have on B? So try and ask interactive, collaborative questions, okay, to make the session, okay, more useful. Try and find out what they know already and link what they are now doing, okay, to what they already know. Your trainees, your junior members of staff might have had seats, okay, in different legal departments. So clearly what you are training them will be different to what they've done already, but there might be some connection, there might be some links. So let's try and link the new experience to an existing experience. It's much more likely that there'll be a cognitive link when we do that. Be really clear on responsibilities. Okay, so try and avoid language like ASAP. You'll do this, at some point during the month. If you've got any questions, ask anybody. Okay, that's all very, all quite vague. So be really, really clear in terms of what the individual is responsible for. And I would encourage you, as part of any training that you give someone on the job, I would always encourage you at the end of the briefing to ask them to summarize back to you, okay, their perception or belief of what it is that they're going to do. And that's much better and much more useful than just asking them if they've understood what it is that you've gone through with them. So try and make it collaborative, and rather than just assuming that they've understood or asking questions like, does that make sense? Are you happy with that? Instead, ask them to summarize back to you what it is that they're going to do to get real clarity on whether or not they've understood, okay, what it is that you've given them. And then finally, I'd identify quirks. Okay, I'm a big believer that training and briefing should involve some sort of example. Okay, a real life example or a previous example, but it's highly unlikely that the example that you go through with them, okay, will include all the quirky bits that they need to know in order to become competent in that area. So where we can, try and identify some quirks, and that'll be using language like watch out for. So it might be that the example that you're using to explain it, okay, may be for an individual who is unmarried, okay, and you are talking about the nil rate band for inheritance tax purposes. But the example that you've chosen to use to demonstrate the training is an unmarried person. So what you might want to do is identify some of the quirks. Okay, so what would happen, for example, if the person was married? In this scenario, the person has children. If they didn't have children, this is what would happen. In this example, this person owns some residential property. If there wasn't any residential property, this is what you would do. So no example that you use to demonstrate training, okay, will have all the quirks that are needed. So where you can, try and identify some of the quirky bits on the job. That's the training. Step 6 is giving authority to the delegatee. So the first slide that we went through early on was all about ensuring that people had the authority. So we need to make sure that we are communicating to anybody that's impacted by this delegation that this person will now be chasing, will now be completing, will now be informing, will now be filling in. Whatever it is that we're delegating, we need to ensure that anybody that's impacted, okay, by this delegation, that they know about it. So I've just created an email that you might want to send, okay, to all the impacted parties, informing them, okay, that from tomorrow or from next week, a different person, okay, will be taking responsibility for this, okay, and it's no longer you. So that's step 6. Step 7 is all about availability. Okay, absolutely no point in training somebody in something and then giving them an opportunity to practice, okay, back at their own desk, if we are then unavailable and totally inaccessible to them. We have to ensure that we make ourselves available whilst they're practicing, or that we delegate the support function to somebody else in the team. And we've got to be really clear about that with the delegatee. So if you're not going to be around tomorrow, that's fine. Okay, but make sure we are communicating that. Tomorrow, you're going to have a practice on this in the office. Okay, there's a really interesting case that I'd like you to review. I'm not going to be around, but I've spoken to Alia already, okay, and she will be, okay, and she knows what it is that you're doing, and she'll be available to take any questions if you've got them. So be available to support whilst practicing, or delegate that support to somebody appropriate. Number 8 is all about reviewing and giving feedback in a clear, timely, and frequent way. We'll come back to that shortly. We've got to make sure that we are scheduling reviews in, and they've got to be timely. The quicker we can review something, the quicker we can give the individual feedback, the less likely, mistakes will be repeated. Also, if it's more of a behavioral bit of feedback that we're giving them, the more timely we give them the behavioral feedback, the more likely it is, that particular behavior would not have become embedded. So timely feedback is absolutely essential. 9 is a practical point, which often when I speak to clients, is where a lot of delegation falls down, especially in the legal profession, where often we have a pool of junior people that don't necessarily just work for us, but they work for various associates, senior associates, directors, for example. So a pool of people, that are working for various different managers. Well, often what happens is we spend a lot of time training them, supporting them, making sure that they are comfortable in this bit of work. But then, step 9, when that bit of work comes up again, we ask that person whether or not they have the capacity to be able to do it, and they are too busy. And therefore, we end up back where we started, and we end up doing the work ourselves. So there are really 2 main approaches for going forward. Step 9. We can either, going forward, once the person now knows how to do it, give them the work on an as and when basis, so on an ad hoc basis, which works very well if you have direct line reports, but can be more challenging when you have a pool of people working for various different managers. Or what you can do is have time blocked out with certain individuals. So for example, if I was managed by you, you would have some Michael time carved out, each week or each month. So it might be I am allocated to you on a Thursday morning for 2 hours. So you have, some Michael time. That is time that you're going to have where you can utilize me for a carved out time. And what you would then do is you would create a list, of all the things that you would like me to complete during that time. And the beauty of that is that you could, Michael, i.e. me, could be working for various different managers, and that's okay. As long as you know and I know that Thursday morning, that is my carved out time for you to complete the bits of work that you would like to delegate to me. So that's just a practical pointer, outside of the theory to ensure that we are delegating effectively. And then number 10, now let's focus my time elsewhere. Assuming we've done steps 1 to 9 really well, step 10 is all about now thinking, actually, some of that transactional operational work that I no longer need to do has been passed down to somebody else. What does that now free me up to do? Does it allow me to spend more time giving effective feedback? Does it allow me to spend more time on business development? Does it allow me to spend more time on projects and process improvements? So number 10 is ensuring that we are utilizing the time saved in something else productive. So they are the 10 steps for delegation, and they link very nicely to the 5 phases that I introduced you to before. So let's focus on that final phase then. I've got about 9 minutes left. So we'll do a very, very quick overview of feedback. Feedback is all about making it work. I think it's highly unlikely that when I travel around the country and my team travel around the country delivering sessions and workshops and programs on this stuff, highly unlikely that anybody would say feedback isn't useful. The main reason why feedback doesn't happen is A, due to a lack of time, which we should be able to overcome, or B, issues or concerns around relationships and the impact that it might have on relationships. Feedback should be these things, and you can see that I use an acronym, boosted. So the first letter of each one of those statements spells out boosted, so it makes it nice and easy to remember what feedback should be. Feedback should be balanced over time. Do not stress or worry about having to give every single time you give feedback something positive. hide the something critical in the middle, and then finish on something positive. Often gets referred to as the feedback sandwich. Okay, do not worry about giving feedback in that way. It takes a lot of time, okay, and often makes you overthink feedback. If someone has done something, okay, on an occasion which isn't what you wanted, you've not got to cushion that or sandwich that bit of feedback in between two bits of positive. Just give them the feedback. Give them the feedback. The most important thing is that it's timely. When I talk about balanced, I don't mean balanced every single time I give feedback. I talk about balanced in relation to it being balanced over time. Every individual should receive a balance from you of both constructive feedback, which is developmental, but also appreciation and recognition, okay, when they've done a good job as well. Feedback should be objective, okay, so it shouldn't be opinion based. So when I talk about objective, I mean linked to some sort of standard behavioral competency, job description. It shouldn't be based on your standards. It should be based on objective data. So if, for example, we have promoted somebody from a trainee to a solicitor, and there's a competency framework, okay, that is geared up for solicitors across various competencies. When we're giving feedback, we can objectively link performance or behavior back to the competency framework. So it shouldn't just be linked, okay, to what you think. It shouldn't just be linked, okay, to your standards, because often they can be quite unobtainable. Feedback, where possible, should be collaborative. I'm going to share with you and introduce you to a framework in a minute, but feedback in the main should be open to a discussion. So rather than just going in and being very directive around feedback, this is what's happened, it was wrong because of this, next time do this. Often what we can do is open up the discussion to make it a lot more two-way. I've just reviewed this bit of work. Now I know what I think about this bit of work because I've just reviewed it. But let's check to see whether or not myself and the person in my team are actually on the same page about that bit of work. How did you find the work? Well, they might respond back and say, I found it really, really difficult. Well, if they're telling you that they found it difficult and I've just reviewed the work and I can see that there's errors, we are on the same page. So let's try and obtain whether or not, okay, there is, whether we are on the same page to begin with. Likewise, when we are thinking about next time and the constructive part of feedback, rather than just saying next time you need to communicate better, next time you need to be more organized, next time you need to be more proactive, make it collaborative. What do you think you could do differently next time? What support might you need to help you do that next time? What might that look like? What process can we agree to? What systems might we develop? So feedback is usually going to be better received if it's open to a discussion and more collaborative. The S is specific, so it needs to be linked to examples. And if there's anything that we've taken away from this session with me this morning, it would be that. When you're giving feedback, always make sure that you have, okay, an example that you can use to illustrate the feedback. And that is the best way of turning feedback away from it being personal, and the best way to turn it so that it's linked to something objective. So rather than talking generally, you are sometimes this or you are sometimes that, let's talk about this example instead. Let's not make it personal, okay, and let's link it to something that's actually happened. Timely, let's make sure feedback is timely. The quicker we give the feedback, okay, the less likely it is that that mistake, if it is a mistake, will be repeated. If it's positive feedback, the quicker we give the feedback, okay, the quicker the person will know what it is that they should reenact and do again next time. And then developmental, without sounding like a drum, okay, that keeps getting beaten. The two words that I would always try and incorporate into constructive feedback would be the two words next time. And when you're giving feedback to a colleague, someone in your team, in your mind, be thinking to yourself, next time, what needs to be done differently next time? What can we agree to next time? And that turns feedback into something a lot more constructive. Feedback shouldn't be a personal attack. Feedback shouldn't be vague. Feedback should be objective and therefore not based too much on your rights or standards, which are often, okay, quite unobtainable. Feedback shouldn't be given too quickly though, okay, especially when we're feeling emotionally reactive. So often just sleeping on something, okay, or often at 5 o'clock on a Friday isn't the best time to send the email, but sleeping on it over the weekend and having a chat on Monday morning would allow you to be more objective. Feedback shouldn't be avoided through fear of upsetting people. That's not going to help people develop. There's a really useful framework, if you're not familiar with it, okay, called the radical candor framework. Okay, it's an area that we talk about a lot with clients. And radical candor is about caring about people, being respectful, being interested, but also challenging them at the same time. And if we don't challenge people, okay, and we're just caring, people won't receive the messages that they need to hear, and therefore they won't develop in the way in which we need them to. So we've got to care about people, but challenge them at the same time. And feedback shouldn't be seen as a one-off exercise. It should be something that is cultural, should be systematic, should be something that we do. If we all work together, okay, on this session this morning, we should be able to give feedback to each other freely and openly. And that shouldn't just be one way. I should be able to create an environment at 3Q Hub where I can give feedback down to my team members, but likewise, they should feel comfortable giving feedback back to me. So here is my model. This is the model that I use for giving feedback. It's the EEC model. Example, effect, change, or continue. When you're giving feedback, always start with an example. Be specific. Show them what it is that they've done. If you're working at home, share your screen, okay, and look at the contract. If you're in the office, okay, pull up, okay, the form, okay, the legal form, okay, so that you can talk through this particular form. If it's something more behavioral, okay, if we are giving feedback on how someone behaved, use the words that they actually said. What did they actually do? So link it back to an example. Ensure the other person knows the effect of the example. I don't know about you, okay, but I'm far too busy to be giving feedback for a laugh. Okay, feedback is there to be purposeful. So when you're giving the feedback and you use the example, make sure the other person knows why we're giving the feedback, why it's important, what impact the example has had. And we can collaborate over that. Sometimes we can say the effect of that is this. Or we could say, do you know what the impact of that was? Do you know what the consequences are of that? So start with the example and then explore the effect. And then it's the change or the continue. Change if it's constructive next time. Continue if it's positive and give recognition and praise for the positive thing the person has done. Hence why I really like the EEC framework, because it's the same framework, okay, whether or not it's constructive feedback or whether it's recognition, okay, and appreciation. Now, my advice would be when you are giving constructive feedback, please ensure that the next time when you are talking about the change, please ensure that it is actionable change. I hear too often people giving feedback and the change at the end is very unactionable. Okay, and if it's unactionable, it is likely to be overly holistic. So that will involve phrases like, next time I need you to communicate better. Next time I need you to be more organized. Next time I would like you to be more proactive. Next time I would like you to take part more in the meeting. And that's unactionable. When you're giving the feedback, it's absolutely fine to identify a holistic theme like communicate better, be more organized. But ask yourself, okay, as the person giving the feedback, what will that look like? What support will they need? How will that happen? When will it happen? And they're the questions that we've got to go through, okay, in our minds when we're delivering the feedback to ensure the feedback is actionable. Let's have a look at a couple of examples, okay? Saying to somebody, you spoke too much at the meeting, okay, is not constructive feedback. There's no example, there's no effect, okay, and there's no clear change. So let's use an example. We went to a meeting. During that meeting, when the other person or Damien asked a question, you jumped in to answer before Damien had finished asking the question. The effect of that is that we then misunderstood what it was that Damien needed from us. Actually, we misinterpreted, okay, what it was. The wider effect of that is we could then end up giving legal advice on something, okay, when we've not got all the facts. That's the effect of jumping in. So the change would be, next time when you get asked a question, just pause. Just ensure the person's finished asking the question before we respond. If you're worried about losing the points, okay, that you'd like to make, just jot them down on a bit of paper whilst the person's talking so that you can trap them and then ask them afterwards. Collaborate. How do you feel about that? Likewise, if we're giving someone positive feedback, you were brilliant at the meeting, all very kind, okay, but doesn't give the individual, okay, the knowledge of what to reenact. So instead, let's be clear. I really liked the way at the start of that client meeting that you went through a clear agenda. The effect of that was we showed the client that we'd spent time thinking about the salient points impacting his or her legal position. So continue doing agendas at the start of all of your client meetings because it was really positive and the impact was really, really good. So critical feedback, constructive feedback, example, effect, change, positive feedback, example, effect, continue. So there is my email address. I know we're almost out of time. I'm going to share these slides with Diane following this session, and she will then share them with you. But if you feel like we could support you in any areas of management or leadership, and they could be focused areas on a whole range of topics, or even indeed structured programs, okay, for your employees or for your teams, please do get in touch. I can see there's a couple of questions, so let me just have a look to see what I've got here. There's a couple of statements actually. One from Alia that I can see. And I can see a question here from Leah. I was wondering if Michael had any tips or insights when you are delegating and supervising colleagues who are in a different location and who you rarely see in person and where all communication is done online. I would encourage Leah, I hope I pronounced that right. I would encourage Leah to have two-way communications which are scheduled in. That would be my recommendation. Connection, okay, is what we need to delegate effectively. Very difficult to build connection with anybody in a one-way world. So my advice would be have catch-ups, have batched catch-ups, and use those catch-ups, okay, to go through the work that you want to delegate. When you are in person, try and get yourselves together socially, but when you are working virtually, okay, scheduled catch-ups where you use that to communicate in a two-way. Not only is that better for clarity, but it's also better for connection.
Thank you so much, Michael, for answering that question from Leah and also delivering such a great webinar today. I'm sure we've all picked up a lot of useful tips for when we're in the office or working from home and looking to delegate or give feedback, particularly to junior colleagues. I think we've all been in a position where we've been a junior colleague and so maybe somebody's given us some work to do, but not really fully explained it, and how stressful that can sometimes be as well. So I think it's important that we take on board a lot of these tips. I personally, learned quite a lot from the training as well, particularly in terms of giving a deadline as well to somebody when you're giving work to someone. Sometimes for me, it's not necessarily something that I'm giving that's urgent, but I still think it's important, as Michael said, to give some sort of a deadline so that they feel that they can manage their time effectively. Because it's often not just myself that's giving that work to them, but they're also being delegated to by other members of the team. I'm sure a lot of you have picked up other tips as well. So we're going to be sending a copy of the slides to everybody that attended and registered for the webinar today. So our colleagues in today's media will arrange that and also send a recording of today's webinar. So if there is anybody else within Women in Wills that you feel could benefit from today's topic, and hopefully then they can join and take on this information as well. So I just wanted to thank Michael so much for attending today and providing us with a lot of really good examples which we can start using straight away. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining as well.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me.
All right. Okay. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Michael. Much appreciated.
No probs. I'll forward you a PDF of the slides, and then you can do what you wish with
Perfect.
it.
Yep, I'll look to get them out tomorrow. So no
Wonderful.
rush today.
Thanks, Diane.
All
Take care.
right, speak to you
Cheers.
again.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.